The system we're working on right now is for a retail environment that's going to have a background music source as well as a DJ input that can be selected. That's going to be headed off to a set of loudspeakers that are consisting of a line array for the top end and conventional subwoofers for the bottom end. We're making the assumption that those are going to be mono because it's not going to be like a listening room environment. But it's just as easy to make them stereo if you want to as well, and you can figure that out pretty quickly after you watch this. Control units are going to be a BB-88 for the DSP and a BBWP Touch7B for the wall plate controller. As you can see, we've got kind of a blank slate here we can do anything we want to with. Now I've gone ahead and brought over background music and DJ sources as well as amplifiers and speakers to the outside of this design. It's important to know that this design here is mostly just for system planning and system layout and having a clean idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish. These parts are not critical to be loaded into the BB-88. In fact, these parts won't show up in the actual firmware or the actual program that gets published to the 88. It's just going to be here for your layout purposes. As you can see, I've labeled the different things for background music left and right. Background music left and right is also over here. The way that you do that is you click on the wire itself. You can see the wire gets highlighted, and then here on propagate, you can just rename it and it'll propagate all along the signal path. So we can say like line array, and you can see that now this has been renamed to line array. And then subwoofer, well, you can see it's taking up all the space there and a little bit hard to read, so we can, if we want to, change this to just say sub. And now that's just been changed to sub. So pretty easy, and you can do that inside the device as well. It'll propagate as long as it makes logical sense for it to still be that. If it goes into a mixer, it's not going to propagate past the mixer because, of course, what the mixer is doing is dynamic and wiring is not. So anyways, let's get into the inside of this guy. As you can see, it's clean in here. There's nothing that's been built into it yet. You can see that the labels we had on the outside carry over to the inside, making it really easy for us to see what's coming in on which input and where it's going. The first thing is we have two stereo sources, and we know that we're probably going to be having mono output. So let's go ahead and sum that right from the very beginning. I'm going to just drag over a summer from the left here. It's already at 2 in, 1 out. If we wanted to make it more inputs, we could, but of course that would be ridiculous in this particular design. So we have the 2 in, 1 out summer, and I'm just going to click on this, highlight it, and then Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste, just like copy and paste in in any Windows word processor or anything like that. And then we'll go ahead and drag these guys over, and that just wires it up so that the device knows where its signal path is going to be. While a wire is highlighted, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to control where it's physically showing up, and that's just for readability and the ease of use. So now we have 2 sources instead of 4 effective sources. And that brings us to this. The next thing that we're probably going to want to throw in here is some way of doing a little bit of peak suppression, especially with the case of the DJ. Obviously, we know that we're going to have background music from a conditioned source. It's not typical for a large retailer to just plug in someone's iPod. But if they have something from a subscription music service, it's probably going to be pretty level. Not likely that you're going to need any kind of suppression of peaks. But the DJ thing, they might be microphones, maybe even microphone drops, or sibilants from a spoken word, needle drops if they're doing vinyl DJing. So just based on that kind of stuff, we're probably going to not want to have the ability for it to send a humongous signal all downstream. So this isn't a terribly bad place to go ahead and just put a peak limiter in there. And we'll put 2 peak limiters in just because there's no harm in doing so. There's certainly plenty of horsepower in this device to run that. And these, of course, can be set up as you need to set them up. Their chances are that once you've got them set up, you're not going to need any additional work done with them. So we'll go ahead and just leave that shut for now. It's always going to be available if you need to make changes to it in the future. The next thing that we're probably going to want to do is have our source selector in there. That's one of the things that was specifically requested, and that's going to be this input selector module here. You can see it's just got 2 ins, 1 out. You could select more than 2 ins if you wanted to, but in this case, that's all that's needed. So we've got this guy here. Now, if you open up the input selector, you see that it's got this drop-down box. And if you wanted to, you could put this drop-down box right on your touch panel. Personally, I feel like drop-down boxes are not as convenient as just a button. So I'll show you how to do a button instead. But you could use the same technique to put this on if you wanted to, just like that. So the next thing we're going to probably want to have on here is we're probably going to want to have an automatic gain control. And the reason that we probably want an automatic gain control on there is just so we can set a target level. This is again up to the engineers who are putting this together. This is just my gut based on the information that I have so far about it. So we'll put that in there. And after that, we probably want to go ahead and give ourselves an RMS meter so we have an idea of what the level is that's coming in there. In addition to the RMS meter, from here we're probably going to want to send off to our relative gain. What the relative gain does is it gives us up and down buttons. It gives us these guys here. So instead of trying to use the touch panel with sliding your finger along it like a stylus or anything like that, you've just got plus and minus buttons, and you can adjust the step size. Right now it's defaulted to 0.5 dB. This module also gives you a mute, and being able to have a emergency or all mute is a good thing on anything where there's live music taking place. So we'll go ahead and run that into that. You can see that you can run from an output to multiple different destinations. Now you can't run multiple things to a single source. For that you need a selector or a summer. But you can split off like this as much as you want to without any trouble. So that's why the RMS meter is okay where it is. Now after we go to the relative gain, if you wanted to, you could drag an equalizer in there or anything else that you need to put in there. I don't actually know what specific to this job is going to be required. So the only thing that I'm actually going to throw in there right now is loudspeaker management. And the reason for that is we've got subwoofers and we've got a high frequency line array, and we want to be able to send the right signal off to each of them. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is take this, copy, paste, and now we've got these two guys. This splits off to each of them. And inside here, you've got the ability to do a little bit of equalization. You've got high and low pass filters that you can adjust. You've got a parametric, paragraphic. You've got a graphic EQ with adjustable parameters. You got a little compressor limiter. You've got another gain control. So you have a fair amount of adjustability in here that you can send off then to your outputs, which means that you may not need any kind of outboard crossovers taking place on your subwoofer, amplifier, or anything like that. Now there's more you can do. I'm not going to get into that for the purposes of this particular video because that's kind of up to the job at hand. What we're going to do next is we're going to put our buttons onto that touch panel. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make our presets for this input selector. That's going to give us two buttons, one that selects the background music while deselecting the DJ, and then we will have one that selects the DJ while deselecting the background music. I don't think that there was any reason that we want to have both of them selected at the same time. If that needs to be done, there's a matrix mixer that you can use to do that with, and I'll get into that if you happen to need it. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take this, double-click the input selector, choose input 1. We know that that's background music, and it's been chosen. And then what I'll do is control-click. Hold down the control key on my keyboard, left-click on this, and you can see it highlights. Right-click it after letting go of the control key, and choose Save Parameter Value to Preset. Create new preset, and that's going to be background music. That's a preset that's created at this point. So the next thing I'll do is I'll choose input 2, and now that this is selected on input 2, control-click, right-click, Save Value Parameter to Preset, create new preset, DJ input. And now those two presets are created. So the next thing we want to do is take this guy and move it out of the way a little bit. We'll minimize it, open up our wall plate. We'll bring this back up so we can see them both at the same time, and that lets us start building our control surface. Now, when you're building a control surface, what you might want to do, just to make things fast and easy for yourself, is have an idea already of how you want this to look. I don't actually have an idea of how we want this to look at this point. I'm just going to throw a few controls on there that I think will make sense, and then the sky's the limit as far as what you want to do from there. Build it how you want it. If you want to have a certain meter somewhere, you can use these same steps to put those meters in place. The first thing, of course, is our source selection. We'll move the source selection in immediately. What we'll do is we'll click on System Presets up here because the source selection was saved as a preset. And you can see that we have those two presets in here as little gray buttons where the rest of them are all not defined. I'm going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard and click once, left click, and that highlights it. Let go of the Control key and then drag it down here and let go of it. And there's a lot of that control clicking that takes place. We can resize these, to be big enough to handle. So you can see I've made this background music one that size, and then I'll go ahead and Control click, drag it down here, and make our DJ input one the same size as that. So we'll make it, I think it was one narrower and a couple taller. So now we have these two. I'll close that, and these two will be functional as selecting between the two different inputs. Let's say we wanted to have some level control or level meters below that, just to show us what what input levels we're at before any processing takes place. So I double-click the input module, and then what I'll do is I'll hold down Control, click, 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 and that highlights all four of these, and we can drag all of them down here at the same time. Now these things, of course, are going to be in the same order left to right that they were up there. So all I have to do is move them around as need be. And again, Control click allows you to select multiple ones. Just hold the Control key and down and you can select multiple ones if you want to, and move them where they're most appropriate. Now, in addition to this, just to kind of beautify it so that when you're putting these up on the screen, remember that by default it's going to have a black background, so the little labels here are going to kind of float on that, not on a bunch of dots. So it will look a little bit more aesthetic just than it does here. But we can drag over little visual things like this rectangle, and we can resize that just to kind of enshroud each section to make it make more visual sense. So now you can see that these are kind of looped around. I'll drag another rectangle over. And that's going to kind of isolate these and make them look a little bit more like they're a cohesive part. So that takes care of input source selection and a little bit of just pretty levels moving up and down. The next thing we're probably going to want to do is give ourselves our absolute gain, and that's what's going to be right here. So we know that we want to have an up button, down button, and a mute. So we'll do Control click, and Control click to select all three of those at the same time. And then after that, we let go of Control and drag them all down here. And you can see that they've shown up on this screen. We probably want them a little bit bigger than that, so we'll make them nice and generous. I think this guy needs to come a little bit larger. No, this should be about the same size, and we'll make our mute also about the same size. We'll separate it a little bit just so it's a little harder to accidentally click mute. And if we want to, we can actually move that up just a little bit higher and make it just not quite as likely to mute on accident. The next thing we can do is we can go ahead and give ourselves a label. We'll drag this over. And this label just gives us the ability to put a text in here. And then we can put a system rectangle around all of this, just to keep it kind of organized. Now, just to make that a little bit more easy to use, what we're also going to go ahead and do is we'll drag this RMS meter in, and we'll Control click it, drag it down, and put it here. And we'll also go ahead and take our auto gain, and we'll Control click the target output level and put that there. Now you can see that that's a horizontal slider. We could try to, squeeze it in here somewhere by moving these things around a little bit. Or if we felt like we wanted to change the shape of it, you right-click it and choose Change Control Type, and you can make it into a vertical slider if you want to. And the vertical slider just gives you, a little bit more ability to control it like that. Or if you feel like you don't like that, you can give yourself a scaled up-down dial or a up-down button dial. You can move this up here and treat it like that if we want to. And this guy here, we can name it target level. And all that's going to do is give us kind of a target level of output before we get to our final gain. So that starts us going in there. Now, if we wanted to put any other kind of stuff on this screen, we can start dragging anything else in there. If you want to have control over the subwoofer level, versus the level of anything else, you can put that in there. But that kind of gets you started on it. Now, once we publish this to the device, this is what your screen is going to look like. Any other controls that are in here can get dragged over the same way. But that's that. Now, I urge you to figure out how you want to lay this out. I just did this kind of, jazz style. I just kind of threw something together. And it may not be how you want it to end up. But that's kind of an idea of what you can start programming. If you want to, for example, you can drag an image over. It gives you this little question mark guy here. You click on the file name on the right-hand side. You can choose a file from your file directory, and then just resize that and put it wherever you want to. So we can stick a little Atlas Sound logo here if we want, or something else. Obviously, you're probably not going to want to stick our logo on there. You'll want to put yours on or that of the client. But then when you publish this to the device, it'll show up by there as well. So these buttons are all programmed in this design. The next step is going to be to publish it to the device. So we can close these two things here. These things need to be mapped to physical devices, so you'd right-click it and choose Map Physical Device. Now, I don't have a BB-88 in my office, so I can't do this next step. But you would choose Map a Physical Device. You would also do the same thing here, map the physical device, and you see how it goes from kind of transparent to opaque. So that gives you the indication that it has been mapped. Then you would click Switch to Online Mode, and it would go through and publish to the devices. You'd hear a couple of clicks from the BB-88, and it would show you kind of a little hourglass, and then it would be live. It would be online. So I apologize that ran on a bit longer than I expected, but hopefully that's the information that you're looking for. Obviously, you know how to get in touch with me if you have any more questions. I'm certainly here to help out, and hope this was helpful.